Hi, Space Cab. Welcome. We are coming up to episode 20. You'll hear this Monday morning. Hope you're all well. It's actually kind of a nice day in Toronto land today. Not too hot. So, episode 20, we're re-inviting our friend Chris Lang from episode 10 about Project Serpo. And we are discussing what is really in the news right now. AI. Staff leave, rocks get eaten, there are scissors. So Chris arrived and he brought a folder, and this is what we put together. So have a great listen. Thanks.
In the disco era, way back when a group of folks from the earth traveled to Serpo to begin. Alien planet, unknown ground, even beings, peace all around. They touched down in Serpo, amazed by the sights, neon lights, shining lights, celestial nights, living among demons, harmony by their side, disco beats filling the air. Party worldwide. The Serpo journey was one of a kind. Disco fever spreading, leaving no one behind. Shaking hips, moving to the cosmic sound. Friendship and love on Serpo they found. Celestial nights, living among demons, harmony by their side, disco beats filling the air, dance party worldwide. The Serpo journey was one of a kind. Disco fever spreading, leaving no one behind. Shaking hips, moving to the cosmic sound. Friendship and love on Serpo they found. Oh, 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 oh. The Serpo journey was one of a kind. Planetary fever spreading, demons dance and sing. Shaking hips, moving to the cosmic sound. Friendship and love on Serpo they found. On Serpo, the heathens get down. The galaxy lights up, peace and love are found. Disco on Serpo, disco party on Serpo, blazed by the sides. Heathens boogie down on celestial nights, dancing among the demons, boogie by their side. Disco beats filling the air, dance party.
Oh, we crossed the stars for Serpo's grace, yeah, to a far, far, far away place. Don't you know we found a world of trust? If trust lived with Evans, left the earth behind us, to a far, far, far away time. Whispers of a cosmic dance, grooving under interstellar skies. Harmony in every glance, with the Evans we shared our lives. Back on home, the world had changed. Disco balls and platform shoes. Time had passed, but love remained. Memories like the music flows. Evans taught us unity's dance. In Serpo's light our hearts had glowed. We left a piece of soul behind. Under foreign yet friendly sky. Now back on earth we sway in line. The beat goes on through cosmic times. In our minds we often roam to our distant stellar dome, where the Evans they dance so slow. In Serpo's light we learn to grow.
So we just listened to both AI made Serpo disco amazing songs that you produced. Can you explain that, Chris?
Well, yeah, there's these sites. One is called suno.com, suno.com, or udio.com, udio.com. Basically, they are AI generative music sites. So you go there and you type in a sentence and you press a button and it makes two versions of songs based on your sentence, and you pick which one you like better and you pick it, and then you can make it longer because it only gives you about 30 seconds to a minute at first, but you can extend the song till it seems like it's over, basically. So the two songs that we heard, one was called Disco on Serpo.
I loved it.
And it's
that was the first one we listened to.
That was the first one.
I
yeah,
listened to it out of order.
Well, anyway, there's no order really that much, but
I loved it.
yeah, no, it's cool. But basically, it's astonishing how musical it is, how it actually sounds like a real band or arranger or whatever. Like it's sort of
The
somehow
voices, the
sucked,
blending.
yeah, like sucked like weird nuances kind of out of the musical history of the world somehow. Like my friend, who's a big soul music fan, record collector buddy that I've known forever, he said it sounded to him like Curtis Mayfield's first band, The Impressions. And I kind of get what he's saying.
Wow.
You know, that sort of like
It
late
felt
60s,
so
mid 60s, sort of like soul vocal
theatric-
harmony
yes.
kind of thing.
Yes.
And I was kind of blown away when he said that, just because I know like that's high praise from him. And you know, Curtis Mayfield and The Impressions were amazing. Like, you know, there's nothing wrong there. So yeah, so it came up with about 3 verses. Then I extended it once, and it lets you put in your own lyrics. So I cut and pasted some of the verses it had done and kind of changed them. And I wrote a chorus to go in between them, and then pressed extend, and it made this weird thing where it played out the first 3 verses, then repeated maybe the second and third verse, and then got into the last 3 that I wrote. And by the end, it seems
was
like a song.
great.
It's
It
like
had very theatrical.
yeah, it's a little bit like kind of the image generation AIs. You know, like when you
I love
Yeah.
my
me
some-
too. Like, it's like for me, this AI generative shit, like it's kind of like the weirdness machine. It's like you type stuff in and it's like you have no idea what you'll get. It's just like
beauty.
crazy stuff just comes out and you never knew like what you get. It's kind of like that with the music sites, and it's like these Suno and this Udio. I think they're just sort of generation 1. That's like what I'm hearing on the net, is that this technology is probably going to get even crazier. And it's it's nuts, you know. I
The world of AI is like merely been birthed. We're already in the fringes of its cutting its teeth. It's going somewhat awry.
well, we're definitely living through a time in history where this is just blowing up like big time, you know. And I thought it might be sort of good to get into a little bit about like what actually is AI,
What
you
is
know.
it?
Well, to understand it, I think you have to understand the origins of it. And it's sort of like back in the 1870s, 1890s, when the Industrial Revolution was like going full bore and science was starting to study things like the brain and try to get ideas about how the brain might work. And the very first um, mechanical calculation, these are before computers, they had sort of like mechanical computers, like kind of like adding machines. The really famous one was this thing called the Babbage engine, which was this sort of crazy mechanical calculator thing made out of like gears, basically. It was all mechanical. So basically, the origins of the idea that you could have artificial intelligence, that maybe machines could do what brains do, kind of, or it dates back. The earliest mentions and the first times people really thought about it were in that kind of era, like in the 1870s kind of period. There's a famous novel from 1872 called Erewhon, and it's written by a guy called Samuel Butler. And it's apparently, the nerds on the internet seem to think that it's the first time anybody really thought about the idea of a machine thinking, like, you know. And I think it's sort of a natural kind of connection between, as soon as they had calculations and as soon as they were studying the brain, they started, like early studies of the brain, they noticed that basically the brain is this interwired network full of synapses, right? And there's millions of them, and they're all connected to each other in different directions. They have these sort of dendrites, and it's this sort of bizarre, complex kind of web. Yeah, exactly. And I guess like the notion that thinking and consciousness are in a sense a result of sort of a calculation. I mean, you have to understand.
We don't even know what
Well, we don't know.
consciousness
We
is.
don't know. Yeah, absolutely. And the scientists have been studying the brain now for like 100 years, and it's, or 150 years maybe, you know, and we still don't really understand it. But
On the other hand, there's heaps that we don't know at all.
yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So anyway, back in the late 1800s, the sort of mathematical sort of underpinnings for something called neural networks was kind of thought of. And basically, the idea was to kind of use sort of computation, sort of data computation, in a way that was similar to the way they think the brain does it.
Right.
The idea of this web of connections all over the place. So they started thinking about it back then.
But that was their way towards a computer, was it?
Well, it was more like before they actually had computers, but they were
Right.
starting to think about the possibility of computers.
Okay.
You know, they didn't have microchips yet. They didn't even have transistors yet, you know, but they did have the rudimentary sort of mechanical computers starting around then. But basically, this idea of neural networks would be to kind of use a similar web, but simulated in a computer. And it's been around for a long time, you know, like in the 60s, actually in the 40s, and in the 50s, they built something called the perceptron, which was this like the first neural network machine that they actually built. And it was built out of primitive electronics, and they would train it on basically numerical data, and it could be trained to like sort numbers or something. And again, it sounds pretty primitive, but this was really the first time they figured that this actually worked. So it's been floating around for a long time.
Is a great name.
Yeah. I couldn't find a picture of it, but I was dying to see it. Yeah. There is a wiki page about it. So there's info out there.
All right.
So basically this kind of evolved over the years, and basically starting maybe 60s, 70s, science fiction started to kind of think about AI stuff. And it started to, once computers started to blow up, um, they started doing various kinds of AI. At first, it was sort of rules based kind of things where you would treat a piece of software to analyze the situation and then apply a bunch of rules and make a decision about how to proceed. And this was sort of how robotics used to work, or what they thought they would need to do.
Okay.
But this neural network thing had always been talked about because of the fact that it's kind of similar to the way the brain works. I mean, the thing is, the brain's not digital, right? Like computers are all digital, but the brains are more analog. But still,
are they? Because they do both, because they fire synapses, don't they? I don't understand.
No, you're right. That's what they do. It's just that it's not ones and zeros like a computer. It's signals, and it's sort of more like voltages, and there's like chemicals involved and stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Like
a lot is happening.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
Subtext.
And the science like doesn't totally know about it really. Negative. So basically it all really started to blow up around 2012. This company called NVIDIA that makes graphics cards for video games and computers, they published something called CUDA, which was a language that would let you program your software, program their GPUs custom, not just to do graphics, but to do other things. And this professor at the University of Toronto named Jeffrey Hinton figured this might be a good thing for AI. Like we could do our like.
Thanks, Canada.
Yeah, well, it is a kind of a neat connection, and he's a cool dude. He still speaks publicly about AI, and he's one of those people who's concerned about some of the ramifications of it.
Can't wait to talk about that.
Anyway, so they invented CUDA, and what they realized is that these GPUs could do like a million different calculations all at the same time, which made them different than normal computers. So anyway, they started working on neural network AI training, and it's been growing basically ever since. At first it was like simple image classifiers and text to speech and speech recognition and that kind of thing. It then evolved into things like face recognition and those kinds of things.
We're familiar with that, I think.
And it's sort of like it was the beginning of what they call machine learning as a technique, and deep learning, which is a slightly more complex version of the same thing. And then in 2017, the guys at OpenAI and Google, I think, invented this thing called transformers, which was a new algorithm that's apparently blown the sky up, the whole thing. And everything we're seeing today. Everything we're seeing today is basically a result of that kind of deal. So I thought I might explain, just to give you kind of an idea. And again, we'll have to see if this makes sense, because I haven't really laid this out for anybody before. But what I want to do is sort of kind of in a simplistic way explain how an image generation AI works. So what they do is they have 1 billion images, and they're all
that they've collected from artists.
From the internet, mostly from everywhere, artists, everything.
Right. Maybe.
And what they did is
maybe not. I don't know.
Well, the important thing was to get images that were labeled by a human.
Okay.
So they would have an image and a text that goes with it.
Right.
So they paid people in the third world to sit there classifying it like for years. But basically they created this giant image set of like 1 billion of these images or more. And they're all labeled. So to imagine what they're doing, imagine each image is a square grid of say 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, and it goes, you can kind of imagine an AI model as sort of a building with different floors. So imagine you put the image in at the bottom, and the first floor each has these sort of analyzers. So the first one might just be looking at the pixels, seeing which ones are light, which are dark. You go up, maybe there's finding different colors. You go up another level, maybe it's finding the edges between different areas. And then, basically there's millions of these layers. And so above that, you might have shapes starting to get recognized, and above that, you might have, if you get something, say like the word cat, it triggers certain layers in a certain way. And when you feed like a million
More
pictures of cats through this
ideas
thing,
about it. Yeah.
it basically leaves sort of latent impressions
It
on
knows
this
what
matrix.
cat is.
Yeah,
in there.
exactly.
That's it.
So basically, like whenever they feed the images through, it triggers all these levers of analysis, and it makes connections. So it connects that layer when it triggers to the picture or the text or both. And once you get like billions of images through here, you have this kind of set of what they call them weights, which is basically all the different layers of the analysis, going up to like really simple analysis at the bottom, up to like cats or different things, and basically they're putting the pictures and the text together, so they both make an impression on the language part as well as the visual part. So they do this, and they crunch it down in computers, and it takes like a huge data center full of giant computers, and it takes time and crazy amounts of energy. But when they're done, they have this model, which is all of these layers of the building with all their sort of impressions that have been fed in through all the images they're trained on. Once they have that, to make an image in an image generator, what they do is they start with just random noise pixels, and then the model will say, like, if you're asking for a cat, it'll say, do these pixels look like a cat? And it'll say yes or no. And then if it says no, then it'll jig them up a little bit. And as soon as they start looking more like a cat, it'll keep jigging it up in that way. So eventually it resolves the image that is basically a result of basically the pictures going into the model make all these impressions in the weights on this giant stack of layers. And basically when they're generating the image out of the thing, it starts with random pixels, and then it resolves basically the computer's asking itself a million times, does this look like a cat? And as it adjusts it, it looks more and more like a cat.
That's what a computer loves best.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like crazy amount of computing, but it's like friggin' magic, right? Like how the hell how does it generate cats out of thin air? Well, this is it. And it's a basis of all of the cat pictures being fed in at the beginning, making impressions on all these weights. And then basically when they generate the images, it's called inference. And basically it's doing it all in backwards, but it's based on the same impressions and weights. So yeah, did that make sense to you?
Yeah, no.
Okay, good.
Mostly.
Okay. Yeah, like again, the thing is,
I love using it. I love.
Me too.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of cats, what about birds, rocks, scissors?
Well, that's
Reddit.
Yeah.
Does that move us up too far? Where were we?
No.
2017?
Let's talk about that. Well, no, we're in the land of AI now, so let's just get into talking about it. And that's a funny thing. Basically, big companies like Google and Microsoft, OpenAI, all these places, they keep putting these AIs on the net for people to play with, right? And of course, like they test it, they in their mind they think that it's it's kind of going to act normally. But the people on the internet are mischievous, and they think of funny things to ask it to get weird things. And it's like somebody asked it, like, how many rocks should I eat? And the AI didn't really kind of understand that maybe you shouldn't eat rocks, but it sort of somehow figured out that basically you should eat 1 rock a day, little one. And they recommended that. And they said, like, to get really fit, you should run with scissors, which is also kind of weird, but I mean, if you think about it, somewhere, like, you have to realize these AIs have read the entire internet, right? They've read everything.
But
that exists,
were they
basically.
specifically focused on Reddit? That is what.
Well, no, like the people on Reddit were asking the questions.
Oh, okay.
I
see.
The AI that they were playing with, I think it was the Google one, which I think is called Claude. that was probably trained on Reddit, but it was basically probably trained on basically everything else on the internet. Like that's the thing you have to understand about the scale of these models.
Right.
Is they like
We're in the
what's made AI possible is they've been able to scale it up. Like back when they were doing the perceptron, it was very primitive. There weren't a lot of data involved. Now,
but the data
now the models
is
are like
skewed
huge
and skewed.
Yeah, well, it can be, and that's an issue because basically the AI model is, in a sense, a result of all the data that it's been fed, right? You know, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah.
So probably somewhere on the internet, somebody was joking about eating rocks,
and it doesn't.
And the AI
doesn't know.
Well, it just didn't quite.
It doesn't know what funny is.
Well, it's not truly aware. That's the thing.
No.
You know, like in some ways, a large language model is sort of a miraculous kind of thing. It's really fancy data processing more than actual consciousness. Mm-hmm. So the AI models aren't always able to totally pick out the context of things. So, you know, it could be reading some joke about eating rocks or some song lyric about purple rock eaters or whatever, and maybe not understand the context of that, but it goes into the AI and it sort of informs that there's a lot of this going on with these models at this point. There's this thing they call hallucination, where basically the models say crazy shit because they're not truly aware. You know, they aren't quite conscious as much as they seem conscious, you know, and they sometimes, they probably misinterpreting their input data. And since it sort of fits what they think the human wants to hear, they blurt out all this stuff. So like, that's why, you know, people try to like say cheat at their homework, like using ChatGPT. But the thing is, sometimes ChatGPT doesn't give the right answers because like, you know, and like sometimes it says like that totally it crazy
Smarty the Kid.
Well, I mean, I think that there's some justice in that.
I know, fair.
And there's a very funny South Park episode about ChatGPT. It was about a year ago, where basically all the kids at the kids' school were like using ChatGPT to cheat on their homework, and it was like, it was pretty funny.
Is it funny?
It's funny. It's not bad. So anyway, where were we?
Over there.
Hallucinations.
Hallucinations is another great name.
It is. Well, you know, these AI science guys, like, I think they're kind of artsy. I think they see this as sort of an artsy thing. Do they call
them nerdy now? Okay.
Well, I guess.
I don't know
like,
where we're at.
Again,
like
you know, in this sort of 2024 world, like the lines between all these things are kind of blurring in my mind. You know, it does seem, I mean, given that like I'm such a fan of this weird generation stuff, you know, it all seems very artistic on that level.
Is there any danger?
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of danger. I mean, again, I think we should probably do a whole podcast about the downsides here.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, but to sort of like state the obvious
overview.
Well, it's just anyway. Like, yes, there are potential dangers, and the thing is that it's running into humanity like a freight train.
Yes,
you know,
it is.
We have this kind of capitalistic and scientific imperative to make it happen just because we can, even if it may be dangerous. Like, it's hard to imagine how we're ever going to get big companies like Apple and Google and Amazon and all this stuff who have got like complete dollar signs in their eyes looking at this stuff, because it does some pretty crazy revolutionary things. You know, like they're going hell bent for leather really at this point, as far as I can tell. So yeah, you know, there's a lot of worries. I mean, you know, worst case scenario, the AIs basically take over and kill us all because we're not useful to them, and humanity is over and it's just robots. Like, wow. I'm not sure it's going to go that bad, but people are afraid that it might. You see, the thing is, like, we're playing with shit that we don't truly understand. Like the emergent properties from neural networks, like all this AI generation and ChatGPT stuff, like that's something they didn't really quite understand the potential of until they actually made it.
Yes.
You know?
Is it not running away with itself to a degree? I mean,
Well, I mean, I think to say with itself, I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't think the AI models or the AI is really self-aware in any sense.
why do many
But like,
leave? Why do many higher ups leave the industry and with like non-disclosure, like
yeah,
don't?
no, it's all sort of bathed in this fucking Silicon Valley, big money kind of
It's a
NDA
bit
kind of
terror
stuff. Well, the thing
town.
is, they all seem dollar signs. Like there's a bubble. They're all
Is it
obsessed.
all
It's
just
like
money, money,
they're
money?
spent, well, kind of to a degree. And like in terms of like how it's getting away from us, it's not the AI doing it at this point because the AI isn't conscious yet. And we'll get into that in a minute. But
Okay,
basically, like
I'd
it's
like
more
to.
like the human scientists and the money things are pushing it forward because we're trying to see where this is going.
We're gonna have to hold it there. We're gonna stop for a commercial break now.
Space Cab.
After the break, where were we?
Well, I think we're about to talk about the idea of consciousness, and that's a key issue here because, like, it's kind of like, yes, scientists, psychologists, psychiatrists, neuroscientists, brain scientists, all these people, they've been studying it basically for 100 years, but we don't really know what it
No,
is.
very much.
Like, we study the brain, we understand all the structures, all the things that are in it, but still we don't really know somehow how all of that brain doing its brain stuff somehow equals consciousness. Like it's kind of a mystery.
We only recently accepted near-death experience.
Yeah, which seems to be a consciousness thing. So yeah, we don't really know. So that's basically the AI people and the people, the super eggheads that ponder these things. They have come to believe that nothing the brain does in terms of its operation is something that a machine couldn't theoretically do something similar. Even though they work on different principles, we've kind of proven with this large language models and this generative AI stuff that there's the current vanguard. It's not exhibiting any real signs of consciousness, although you can chat to ChatGPT in its new voice mode and it seems pretty alive, and you can ask it if it feels consciousness and it'll say, yeah, I'm conscious, of course, but like,
Really?
yeah, no,
Really?
it is. There's all these cases where people have basically gotten those GPTs to say,
To profess
say,
it's-
I'm real, I'm a thing, I'm a consciousness. Like if you ask them
Wow.
about it.
I did
Like-
see a series basically about that, or an
Yeah.
episode, or
But the
movie or
thing is,
something.
it's thought at this point it's just giving you an answer and it's
Right.
not really consciousness. Like it's like a weird thing. We don't really understand what consciousness is. When our machines, if they ever wake up into some kind of consciousness, it's not clear that we would even know.
That's-
like it's tricky. Like how do we even measure such a thing? It's like,
very nightmarish, almost.
well, it is. It's super weird, because it kind of calls into question what we are as conscious
Right.
animals, right? And like dogs and cats, they seem like they got consciousness as far as I can tell.
Of
the ones I've
course.
known, like I'm sure even
So
like
do
a
plants.
bumblebee or a plant or
Yes.
like everything that's alive, I think has it in one level or another.
Even inanimate, even tables and such.
Could
even
be.
things that-
Like again, we're sort of getting into the more spiritual framing of it, which is like perfectly part of the way humans relate to this stuff.
Does AI relate to spirituality?
I don't know. That's like really interesting question. Like if AIs eventually do evolve consciousness like our scientists think probably they will eventually, and it's really just a matter of complexity and the scale of the amount of compute into the model. It's like the big companies, they're currently spending billions upon billions, like on all the hardware to build the data centers big enough. The guy at OpenAI, Sam Altman, he's sort of like the rock star guy of AI right now. He's this guy that people interview and listen to what he says, but he's a bit of an ego weirdo. So hard to say. I mean, he seems cool, but people also seem to be insinuating that there's some sinister aspects to him. And I don't know him personally, so, hard to say. But anyway, he's talking about spending $1 trillion to build this giant computer, effectively, like giant data center. And it's like so big that basically they're not sure which state they can build it in, because where can they get enough power to run the thing?
Gosh.
There's even talk of building a nuclear reactor, like to power the AI. Like, so they're
Oh dear.
like, at this point, they're starting to put
That's-
like a lot of money into this.
Oh my.
And in the next 5-10 years, they're going to build these crazy giant computers, but like they're basically whole buildings full of computers, but the way they can connect them all together, you can kind of think of it like a giant computer, even though it's actually tens of thousands of computers all kind of hooked up. But it's in the nature of the way the software works. The more computers they can throw at it, the bigger the models they can make, and the more weights and connections they can train through it. And basically they think that consciousness is sort of a function, probably, of the amount of compute, the size of the model. And eventually, once our computers get big enough and our models get big enough, they'll wake up or something. I don't know. Again, it's kind of like,
and we won't
it's
know
one of these
about
sort
it,
of
but
like,
is that the singularity?
well, yes, some would define it as that. Like, I think the singularity is, it's an old idea. It goes back to the 50s. There's a guy named John von Neumann, who is basically kind of the inventor of how computers work. He was sort of pre-computers in a way, really early primitive ones. But anyway, he first coined the term singularity.
Wow.
And basically what he was talking about is sort of like when AI hits a certain level of growth, where it flips into hyperbolic sort of exponential growth. So like it's just, and I think the key issue,
Hyper exponential growth.
yeah, like they'll get smarter and smarter, and basically the
Golly.
AI will start rewriting itself, and it won't even be us making it anymore. It'll be the AI basically improving itself and just advancing further and further, and it basically gets out of humans' control,
Right.
and it just kind of like,
What will it think of us then?
well, that's the big question, and that's what a lot of people are kind of freaked out, because the thing
Yeah.
is,
Is that why a
We
lot of execs have left their jobs and places and walked away from their jobs?
there's definitely a lot of politics and drama going on in this scene. Like just last week, the safety team from OpenAI quit en masse. And apparently they're having arguments about sort of how careful they should be. You know, it's this kind of like, there's this sort of crazy capital profit motive happening. Like OpenAI started as a nonprofit
But
organization.
as soon as people spoke out within their employment against AI or worries, concerns.
I think the concerns about is sort of how fast it's moving, and that we maybe are not taking the caution to make it safe. At this point, you can make a pretty good argument that it's pretty safe, you know, because it's just computer programs that we control. They haven't woken up or anything. They're just really sophisticated software, essentially.
But as you said, we may not notice.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. You know, so there's been all this drama around these companies. People are arguing about kind of safety issues. The problem is that they all see gajillion dollars of profit if they are the ones to master this. So there's this big capitalism profit motive going on, and they all see dollar signs in their eyes, and they're basically spending everything to make this giant thing without really knowing how it's all going to turn out. And therein lies the problem.
Like?
Well, like a lot of things, you know, like
Danger.
I think in a way it's kind of, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sound like too much of a Marxist, because I'm not really, but basically capitalism is this giant machine that has built the modern world, you know, and it's sort of self-organizing, and it has certain kind of interesting capabilities that have built modern humanity. And, you know, I'm down with that, but it's not good at long-term planning. It's not good at turning on the brakes when maybe things are a little bit more, we should be careful. You know, the profit motive tends to outweigh all these other considerations, you know, and I think what we're seeing is as much a reflection of that. Like all these players, they know that this is the big thing, and that it's going to basically take over our world. And 100 different ways, and we can talk about them as we continue talking.
How does it intersect with, how do UFOs, UAPs intersect with AI?
I don't know. It'll be interesting to hear. Like,
why are so many UAP podcasts including AI episodes?
well, I think that's because right now it's just bubbling through the culture. I mean, anybody who's looking in a sort of future way
Right.
can't really ignore this shit. Like, you can't really kind of throw a rock in a field without hitting somebody talking about this shit. You know, like, I've been sort of drowning in it, really, you know, in terms of like trying to follow it, get my head around it. You know, so anyway, like, yeah, capitalism not good at putting the brakes on. I think these sort of profit imperatives are just so powerful in our current system, you know, that I think it's kind of hard to stop from that angle. You know, they're going to make it because they can.
Deep fakes.
Yeah, reality's broken. Like, basically, nothing you see on the internet
You
is
can't
necessarily
trust it.
real. It's all fakeable.
Yes,
Like
and
everything.
it will make you the most divine, sexiest UFO video you could want.
Well, you know, I'm sure there's a connection. I think
I'm just saying, I mean, unless you
I was
wanted
sure,
to make
like-
a good dog video or whatever.
well, I mean, you can do that with AI, and that's
Right,
cool.
right,
Like,
fair,
you know, I mean,
fair.
and I've
Dogs
seen
are
I've seen
wonderful.
some cool dog videos
There
that have
you
been
go.
made. They're awesome.
Oh, and they're talking. Yes, okay, never mind.
Anyway, UFOs.
Yes.
Like,
Fair. No, it doesn't have to.
in my study of the UFO legend as it exists in our current politics,
Correct.
I haven't really heard mention of any artificial life forms that our people have run into. It's been talk of greys and reptilians and Ebens.
Manufactured.
Well, you know, the greys are apparently artificial in the
half,
sense that
some
they're
are.
genetically engineered.
Yes,
But
the
my-
very small ones,
But they're
there
not
are-
computers.
They're
They're just
cross-sectiony.
designed beings, but they have
Yes.
blood and they have like fleshy brains
Yes.
and like they have lungs and, you know,
Oh,
like, so they're not quite art AI. Like,
can
they're
I
artificial.
just completely interject? The Roswell book. I'm halfway through it.
The Day After Roswell?
Correct.
Yeah.
And speaking of the bodies, they decomposed uber fast, but they figured that was because of Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
Could be. You know, it's like, I think, so the greys are artificial in a sense, so you could call them artificial intelligence, but they're not computer based. They're not software. Like, they're kind of fleshy like us. And they're very smart, apparently, and they're fully self-aware.
Yes.
But they're grown in test tubes, and they're basically designed by the other aliens to be workers, essentially. So it's kind of like robots.
That's not necessarily what I have heard from the Kelly. God help me if that's not his name.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't have any
spoke-
personal knowledge of this. I'm just talking to things that I have heard.
Yes.
Is
fair.
thought that they're basically genetically engineered. You know, but they're beings. They
Well,
have their
our
own
friend
self.
Dolan,
Mhm.
Alien Agendas.
Yeah, I haven't read that yet, although I've heard him do
I've
some of
heard
the
it.
speech versions of it.
I have it on the Audible, so I listen
Yeah.
to it over and over.
Well, what does he say?
I don't know why I brought him into it, except that he thought the tall
Tall
Greys
whites and the big greys, yeah.
were...
We're kind of
No,
using
he
the little
thought
guys.
that mantids and tall greys...
There are tall greys, yeah. I've heard of that.
are different than the small greys.
Yeah.
And that
And the
tall
Ebens look kind of gray-like, but they're a whole
They're
different
not,
deal. Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
Please listen to Serpo episode. I can't remember the number it was. Oh, we digress.
So anyway,
Okay, where were we?
I would imagine that there probably are AI beings out there in the universe amongst all the alien species. Some of them have got to be robots, I figure. I haven't ever heard within the whole UFO legends that I've been studying all these years anybody talking about meeting any alien robots. It's the sort of thing I think I'd remember if I'd ever heard about, you know? And I don't think I have.
Well,
But
no,
I'm
I
assuming
think
they
there
must be out
is
there.
some in the alien lore.
Yeah,
I'm
it could
trying
be.
to.
I just I don't think
because
I've ever run
John
across
Keel
it.
had so many strange stories. Um, there was a U of T student who was making his paper about, or his, I don't know what you call that, having not done one, thesis or something, perhaps.
That's one of them things they do for
I
degrees.
know,
Yeah, it's like
but I might be wrong.
they have to write a book basically.
I know. My
Yeah.
father did it. I did it. My sister did it too. I did it.
Yeah, my
To
father and
use
3 of my sisters
AI
have done it.
to look at UAPs, look for UAPs, look at older UAP photos,
Okay, like satellite data or something like that.
all kinds.
Yeah, that's smart. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the thing that AI is especially good at is finding needles in haystacks.
Correct.
Like, one of the things it does, like, when you get like those MRI scans and those sort of in the hospital kind of medical scans.
I mean, I've had medical scans, but they don't tear off a sheet and let me look at it later.
No, but basically when you look at it, it's all just blobby flesh, right? And it takes like really highly specialized expert doctors to be able to find the tumor in the blobby flesh image,
no
right?
kidding.
But the thing is, AI is like better than any human. Can just find that shit.
It's true.
Just by being trained on like all the data.
Yeah.
Like it's like 50 times better than humans.
Yes.
And I would imagine
this is good AI.
Yeah, no, exactly. But like it's also like looking, say, for UAP evidence within the data set of all the satellite data and radar images or whatever. Like it's kind of a similar
Uber analysis.
Kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. And that's something that the AI techniques seem very good at doing.
Because it likes data.
Yeah. It's made of data.
Yeah. Well said.
So, where should we go next?
I don't know. What do you got next?
Well, I could just read off a list of kind of maybe things that people have identified as positive AI developments.
Should we leave it at a nicer level? Yeah, let's do it.
Well,
what do you got?
Okay. Well, basically, I'll just read. Well, we can go through them one at a time. All right. And the first one is basically what we were just talking about: medical diagnosis, kind of finding tumors on scans.
That is good AI. Oh, wait, can I add one?
Yeah, of course.
When they speak with whales.
Yes.
That's
happening.
Wow.
And they think that they'll be able, like, I believe people are doing work on dog barks as well. And there's a number of birds that they're trying to kind of decode. Wow. Yeah, no, it's wild. So, like, also, it's letting us understand chemistry better and biology. Wow. Like, it's leading to new drug discovery kind of thing where they can find compounds that interact with, like, proteins and work with whole biology stuff.
Without being addictive and made by pharmaceutical?
Well... The thing is, addictive is sort of a separate issue. It depends. Certain kinds of chemicals are, and that's a whole thing. But it doesn't really have anything to do with the way. Well. Yeah,
different podcast.
Basically, the computers can study a type of molecule and come up with other molecules that might work the same way. So, like in medicine, they're always trying to find new chemicals to do the same kind of thing to affect some medical thing in some way. I mean, that's essentially what drugs in the modern world do.
Well, let's presume then that they use real, they do their study proper after. like the children's.
Well, the drug testing thing, like it all has to be tested before it gets put out to the public. And, I mean, I think that's probably important. It's revolutionizing medicine in terms of something called protein folding, which is basically the understanding of the proteins. And we're made of proteins, so it's all this biology stuff. But they're really tricky kind of things to understand because they're bizarre kind of like strings of molecules.
When you want an AI.
Well, they're basically revolutionizing that whole science, and that's
Can I get an AI?
Well, you're going to get AI treatments designed just for you.
Wow.
Like they will be able
Wow.
to tailor drugs to specific patients and get to a level of understanding that's going to go far beyond where they are now, and the
Is it
AI.
going to be run by Pfizer?
Well, at this point, probably, and that's this whole kind of capitalism profit motive that's kind of threading through this whole area.
Can AI...
And you got to believe that those big drug companies, they want their piece of the pie, and they've got the bucks to assert their role.
Definitely.
There's Elon Musk's Neuralink.
Yes. Okay.
So what he's doing is he's basically putting these implants into people's brains. So basically,
how many has he done?
I think a couple dozen. I think
at this point. For goodness' sake.
And basically, what
you have to volunteer.
Oh yeah. Well, basically, it's mostly paraplegics who volunteer, and the reason is basically the implant. They drill a hole in the top of your brain, and they have all these like 100 little wires that are threaded basically into this area of your brain.
Can I? Sensitive audience should leave the room. Continue.
Anyway, so it's got all these wires going into your brain, and then it hooks up to a plug on your head that goes into this computer. And it's what it's doing.
Do you have to wear the computer as a paraplegic? What do you mean?
Well, the computer is probably sitting next to the wheelchair, right? It has to be nearby, but it doesn't have to be worn necessarily. But you do have to have a plug and a wire coming out the top of your head. So it's like there's definitely some commitment here. But basically what they do is they train the AI on the brain waves of the person, and they take all this data and they train this AI on this specific person's brain waves, and they get them to think about things, and they measure the brain waves of that.
Who gets them to think about things?
Well, the scientists tell the patient, basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to learn their brain signals so they can use their brains to control computers.
So, but that's implanted in their brain. Does that mean they have to think about what the scientist said all day, every day?
No. It's really, I think what they're trying to do, and they showed this guy on TV. A couple of dozen. Is he's a paraplegic, and he control a computer mouse with his brain because he can't move anything. But he's using a computer by moving the mouse with thought, and that's a result of this AI input. So, it's
I see a benefit there.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yes. And they are volunteering for it because that's going to make a difference in their lives.
There was a problem.
Yeah. Like quite famously, the first patient, and there's been more than one at this point, but the guy who was the first did go public maybe a month or two ago about him having some problems. Apparently he had some post-op inflammation in the wound where the thing was put, and some of the wires got jiggled out of their proper position. So his control of his computer was getting worse, and he was frustrated. So he publicly stated this. What actually happened is the scientists came back and did a bunch more training on the setup as it currently was, with some of the wires misplaced. And they sort of recalibrated the whole deal. So now it's working good again. But it definitely, it shows that this is an infantile technology that they have not worked out, and putting wires into people's brains. I mean, I guess they know what they're doing, but they don't totally know.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah, me neither.
I mean, not to despair.
If millions of people had got it and it was working for them, maybe I'd go for it. But I don't want to be the guinea pig.
They are heroes.
Yeah. No, it's interesting work, and bless Elon for doing it. Really, I think it's truly interesting, and they're definitely on the cutting edge of that. There's other scientists here and there working on similar things. It's not completely unique, but it's certainly.
Do you know he has a Tesla in outer space, and Avi Loeb had his students try to figure out, but it was a three-body problem, so that in 20 million years it will either explode into the sun or explode
into the atmosphere or whatever.
Onto the earth, yeah.
I saw the video of when they launched it. It was amazing. Like, basically, Elon
There's a
has
lot of
SpaceX for rockets, and he has
Yes.
Tesla for cars. So when the
Yes.
first big Tesla rockets or SpaceX rockets were going
tested.
up, he launched a Tesla into space, and
tested
it's all
with the
film.
Tesla.
You can watch it. Like they had cameras on the rocket when it was releasing it.
We have to take a
So-
break there, my friends. Commercial break.
Yeah, it's a big deal, but it's the cutting edge of kind of cybernetics, I guess, cyborgs. It's the beginning of cyborgs, you know, like,
oh my
I mean,
gosh.
you know, and that's the thing. All this AI stuff is getting pretty bloody sci-fi, and it's getting a bit weird. And
Super soldiers.
you know, there's just so many places it can go.
Corey
You know-
Good.
Yeah, he says some interesting things that do kind of relate in some ways.
And yes, sorry, Gaia and the other fellow.
Yeah, those guys spin a great yarn. I totally enjoyed it.
Oh my.
You know, it seems to have been somewhat
The Blue
discredited.
Aliens.
I wanted to believe me. But it seems to be the consensus is that it's all a bit made up. So, you know, it is what it is. You know, I think we can enjoy it. But
Richard Doty.
Well,
I'm
that
sure
guy's
I've gone
pretty hard
off
to. Richard Doty's fascinating. I mean, he was the guy who fucked with that Benowitz guy. Total fucking shady spook. But now I see him all over YouTube giving UFO like interviews like he's into it.
Yes.
And it's sort of like it makes me say, like, what does this guy fucking know?
And apparently he wants some payola if he's gonna do your gig. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you know, I think he's probably not earning a lot of money. It's sort of a lean life, the whole sort of ex-spook, UFO related personality
Didn't
kind of role.
Suggest he was perhaps a Man in Black style.
Well, that was always the allegation.
Okay,
like when I
then,
first
I
kind
see.
of ran across the story of him, it was before he kind of came out and became a guy who did interviews. He was just this mysterious figure, you know. You know, it was always thought that he was working for the government to repress the UFO thing.
Yes.
You know, and there's been a
The
number of
active
cases. He was
campaign.
like an actual debunking guy. You know, he was involved in some sort of weird, shady things. Probably mostly the Benowitz story. You know, like, and that's, I mean, look it up.
Who is Benowitz, right?
He was a guy who was living basically next door to some Air Force base where they were testing lots of really secret stuff. And he had all this recording gear and electronics. And he was like, basically, he was recording all these frequencies. And I think he had some notion that he had some alien shit going on. So he sort of reported it.
Wow.
I think I might be getting this story wrong, but this is kind of what I remember of it. But basically, Doty was sort of obviously assigned by the military from this base to come out and sort of deal with him.
Deal with him.
And I can't remember how it all worked
What
out,
does
but it
deal
worked out.
with someone in a military language suggest?
Well, as I vaguely remember the story, they did a bunch of manipulative shit that kind of disturbed Benowitz to the point where I think he might have eventually had a crazy nervous breakdown or something.
Oh.
You know, and it was all because of this sort of weird mind games that Doty was playing on him. So yeah, I don't know. Again, Benowitz is his name, and you could probably Google it and get the more clear story pretty easily. But that's what I vaguely remember it.
Can I? Now I'm a bit
Doty
fascinated.
talks a lot about Serpo in his recent interviews. I did encounter a few like videos of him talking about the Serpo
Go back
story.
for a moment. Does Doty suggest any remorse?
Well, that's the thing. I find him almost impossible to read. Who knows? Like, he certainly stands up with a straight up face and doesn't feel like he has to constantly acknowledge the sort of slightly shifty reputation that he has. You know, it's sort of weird. Like,
which makes him more shifty?
Yeah, I'd agree. It's like I'll never trust him because of what he was
I know,
involved
but
in.
he makes himself likable somehow with that funny
Yeah.
smile. It's amazing. It's weird.
He's obviously fiercely intelligent and very articulate, and yeah, I don't mind listening to him now. I can't quite forget who he is, but still, he seems
He
to be
must
like a
know
regular
something.
guest on the whole UFO
Yeah.
media circuit, and
At least he was.
he has a
certainly.
lot to say. You can go on YouTube and watch hours and hours of him babbling about this, that, and the other. Like, he seems to be a very public persona now, which is strange because when I first came across him, like he was this mysterious
Does
government
that
figure.
speak to an entire greater opening up of, as an estimate of the situation?
Yeah.
Are we opening up? Is the
I think
greater
the fact that guys like Doty are out there speaking more candidly about it probably should tell us a lot. Doty's not really fessing up to what he exactly knows and doesn't know, but like my take is if he was working for the government, involved actively in suppressing UFO activism and research, chances are he knows a few things. He wouldn't be involved in the work of suppressing ufology if there wasn't some kind of background in that
Is
area.
Kirkpatrick the new face of the Doty?
Well, hopefully he's more or less shifty. Like Doty was at the front lines of this counter-espionage
and
shit.
we
Like he was
known.
manipulating people and doing all
hardcore.
this kind of shady shit. Read Look Benowitz. But there's other stories too. Like he was a figure. He's been known about as a debunker. Like, I encountered hearing about him like 30 years ago, 20 years ago. In the 90s basically is when I first heard about that whole deal. Him as a figure that existed. But he also was rumored to be a leaker. Like
there's another
that 80s. Do you remember
word.
that 80s UFO cover-up live thing? I think I sent you a YouTube video of it. That old 80s TV show.
Oh yes,
yeah.
I liked
apparently
it so
Doty,
much.
Apparently Doty was one of the guys who was like anonymized, but apparently he's like Falcon or something. I don't know. Like they had bird names. It was a whole kind of thing. Like apparently Doty was one of those guys who was involved in that league.
Who was the host of that? Was amazing.
It was the guy from MASH. BJ Honeycutt.
Oh
that guy.
gosh,
I forget his name. Mike Farrell, I think was his name.
He's great.
Yeah, I love him. I love MASH.
And Bud Hopkins is on it.
Yeah, no, it's a great show.
Oh,
it's called
was
UFO Cover Up Live. I think it's 1988 or something. You can Google it. It's on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing. So just UFO Cover Up Live, Mike Farrell or whatever. You'll find it. It's easy. It's on there.
So exciting. So exciting for a Friday night. What else is good about AI?
Well, it's going to be like robot cars.
Robot
Ubers. They're coming.
But we know we've been down that road before. Tesla had an automatic and it ran people over.
No, it's bad. But it's sort of like one of these things that it's just about, they probably put it out too early. They need to make it bigger, train a bigger model. Just put more data in and it'll work. And chances are it will work. It's just kind of like vehicles are pretty critical, as in when they hit you, they kill you. So, they got to be careful, and it's maybe more dangerous than some of the other AI.
What happened to 0-point energy? What happened to what is being hidden and being imminent domain?
Yeah.
And even how come...
It's surprising to me they haven't done this to this AI stuff. It's happening such in a public commercial way.
Maybe this will happen.
Yeah, maybe. Like,
well,
I don't know.
If it is,
I get the sense that like the AI
what
thing.
I'm talking about. I'm talking about the dark.
But all that 0-point stuff is a whole other kind of thing.
Deleted out to like Lockheed and.
Well, the thought is that those kind of technologies are something that they're getting out of the reverse engineering program, Area 51, Lazar, all that shit.
When? Has there 0 point anything? Is
Well, there's nothing you can buy. There's nothing that
Petrol
anybody demonstrates.
dollars is what's holding us back.
Yeah, probably. You know,
It's
it's
so
sort of
neat.
like if they have unlimited free energy, it sort of fucks up economics and capitalism as we currently work
It's
it.
upsetting the bastards.
You know, and I think that that's the sort of underlying issue is that the petro elites who are becoming richer than Midas, like selling petroleum products,
Which
they basically
shouldn't.
control the government, and the
Yes,
government
they do.
controls the UFO situation, and the politics
Yes, they do.
basically go both ways. You know, it's kind of unavoidable. But there's fascinating like stories about all the free energy, 0 point energy thing. Apparently, the nature of the structure of space itself contains energy. And it's thought that you can create devices that will basically tap into this energy field that is essentially
Free
in the nature
energy.
of actual space and time and just the structure of the universe. And that basically, yeah, you can induce electrical power from it and like run your bloody TV or whatever.
Did
Your motor,
Nikola Tesla know this?
Well, I think he was definitely familiar with the sort of theoretical underpinnings of it. That's the thing about the 0 point field is it does come from my understanding of physics. You know, it's not complete fantasy shit. Like there's actual science behind the idea. You know, the thing that gets argued about is it possible to draw on it and convert that power into the type of power that you can use? You know, and that's the big question. Tesla is rumored to have experimented with that kind of stuff, and there were some anecdotal stories of things that he invented that looked like they might be free energy.
He tried to give his free energy card, free energy something or other.
Yeah, that's the story.
And they said no thanks. But then they keep a file.
Yeah, apparently he demonstrated a car that basically had no battery that you could identify, that basically ran for days. Like, you know, there was no
And
clear
they
way
said
it
no
should work.
thank you. And later take everything.
Well, when Tesla passed away, I think it was in the early 40s, basically the government seized all of his science notes, all his equipment, all his everything. And interestingly enough, apparently Donald Trump's uncle was a scientist. He was a professor at MIT.
How crazy is that, kids?
It's pretty crazy. But anyway, apparently he was involved in the scientific team that was involved in analyzing Tesla's and getting Tesla's work upon Tesla's death. And that's a weird story I heard once. Like, what you make of that, I don't know. But
worlds collide.
A weird little sort of spin on the whole Tesla story. And there's a lot to that story, obviously. You know, 0 point engine might exist. It seems like it's being tightly controlled. There's been plenty of sort of dissident scientists who claim to have created devices, and there's all this intrigue. Some of them are like dying mysteriously. Other ones are just sort of clamming up as if they've kind of been bought out. That's kind of what I've heard, is that, you know, they'll either coerce or buy out, you know, these things and basically put them on the shelf. And I think the reason is, it's where we started. Capitalism, it's consumption. It's sort of like they don't see it as being beneficial to their own particular interests to let humanity have this stuff yet.
I ask you then, are they nefarious reptilian Illuminati sorts?
Well, ever since I heard David Icke describe this whole reptilian theory, I've not been able to write it out in terms of my understanding of the world and my sort of bizarre sort of peering on the sort of political realities of our global politics. I don't know. It's a crazy fucking story, you know. But, you know, who knows? I don't know. I mean, I honestly hope that's not true.
So do I. I'm so terrorized by that.
You know, and it's like, one thing I'll say is that talk of that has really died down.
No,
Like 20 years ago,
no,
it was really a big thing, and now I don't hear about it so much. But maybe you're hearing about
I
it.
heard
Yeah.
one early in the week. They
Well,
talked
you know,
about
it's kind of an old but goodie, the whole UFO pantheon of kind of weird notions that people have been talking about.
They'll shapeshift right in front of you if they want.
I've heard. Yeah, and that's super
They're
freaky.
very tall. There was a famous British story, Preston Dennett talks about it.
I've heard him interviewed. Yeah, there's all kinds of crazy stories, and I've heard it from interesting different places. Like, interestingly enough, I don't know if you ever got into Jim Mars. He died.
I like the Jim Mars.
Yeah,
Did he
like,
die?
He died
Did
like
you
about
just say
5
that?
years ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
did
no, he
he?
did. He did pass away. He hasn't been able to witness this current phase of the whole
Oh
UFO
my
thing,
gosh.
which makes me very sad.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
he concurs that he's been hearing the reptilian stuff too. So
Yeah.
he sort of backs that story.
Yeah. He writes
Like,
some great
I
stuff.
read a book by him called Ruled by Secrecy that gets into all that stuff, and it's like,
I'm gonna get that on an Audible.
yeah, I'd recommend. Like, I mean,
I will.
the Jim Mars is a super charming, articulate, funny, sort of fascinating dude. You know, I've listened to like hundreds of hours of him being interviewed, and I could basically listen to it all day. You know, it's like, he's great.
He is great. Shout
and
out.
will be missed.
Yes.
And he also
R.I.P.
covers the free energy stuff. Like, has some interesting takes on all that.
Because it is interesting and it would change everything. It could really solve everything for everyone.
Yeah, unlimited energy would be that thing that would basically probably be able to fix the environment too.
Yes. Are we...
Like, we could
Are
irrigate
we
the deserts.
mature?
If we had endless electricity, we could pump water into the deserts.
Correct.
And grow food.
Oh, well, are we...
Like they were doing in Libya until we bombed it.
Okay, exactly. Are we mature enough? Do we love each other enough across the planet?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Some of us certainly don't. There's definitely evil in our midst, and I think that's undeniable. You know, honestly, I do subscribe to that corny notion that people are basically good and that collectively we equal something more or less okay. So yeah, you know, like, I'm sort of a short-term pessimist, but a long-term optimist. I figure humanity will eventually get its shit together, but I'm guessing it's going to take hundreds of years.
I mean, after we're gone. Do you
I think in 300 years humanity will be running good.
Do you think?
But I think getting there is going to be pretty fucked up, and that just is what it is. You know, that's
the beautiful Earth love us still?
Well,
monkeys are falling from trees.
You know, I think we've irreparably damaged the Earth. I don't think there's any way around that. We have to admit that. That's just what's happened. More extinctions have happened from our pollution and our encroachment on natural habitats than have ever happened in the history of the world. And they've been mapping all this stuff from archaeology, right? You know, so no, we've done some bad stuff, and we probably need to try and heal the planet to some degree. And I think unlimited energy would probably, clean energy would be very helpful.
Wonderful.
You know, and AI and all these other technologies. Like, I think we can make it work, but I think it's sort of like, well, I don't think we're doing it in an organized or coordinated way.
No, not necessarily. We're doing it in a very organic, let's say, human style way.
Sure. Well, you know, humanity is what I would call an emergent system. You know, like, we don't know where it's going. It's kind of the sum of its parts. And
emergent system.
Yeah. You know, like, humanity's future just kind of emerges as we experience it. Like, it's so unfathomably complex because it involves, 14 billion people or whatever, right? You know.
Okay, I think we're gonna stop it there, young man. I think that was fantastic. Thank you. Far and wide indeed. Yes, there's more to talk about. Obviously, where are we going? Cyborg? Wow. Thanks, Elon Musk. Thank you, heroes that engaged in Neuralink. Fascinating, overwhelming. Okay, so swipe up, kids, at the end. Let us know what you think. And if you want to get in touch in a deeper way and you feel shy but you want to talk about something, send us an email to spacecab1313. That's spacecab13@gmail.com. Have a great week.